Welcome back, everyone, to the Sugarcane Podcast. I'm Rudy.
Hey, and I'm Sheldon, the founder and CEO of Sugarcane.
And we're here for some more tasty tidbits of what's going on in crypto. Have that backdrop tastiness. So, what is tastier than having a wallet full of cash?
You're right. A wallet full of Ethereum.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And like, how do we even get that wallet? Where does it come from? It's digital. How do I know it's mine? It's not in my back pocket.
Yeah, it's cryptography.
Cryptography. The topic of everything in crypto, where it comes from, cryptography, cryptocurrency. And we're going to go over exactly what it means to have a wallet, how it's generated, what it means to you, some tips on keeping it safe, and different ways of generating a wallet. And my first experience with a wallet was back in 2013-ish. You had to actually download the whole blockchain application on your computer, wait hours or days to synchronize, generate a wallet on that, and keep that safe. Nowadays, it's a lot easier, much easier. And we can go right into a classic example of hardware versus software wallets and what it means to use like a MetaMask. I think that's a popular one. And kind of maybe what centralized exchanges do with your wallets. So before we get into all that, Sheldon, how the hell is a wallet even made?
Yeah, a very, very great question, just because that's like the backbone of what we're actually doing in the crypto space. So kind of the very, very start of it is that on your computer or on your physical hardware device, if you have a hardware wallet, what it does, it generates a private key, right? So it creates, based on the randomness in that device or actually on your computer, basically generates a private key, and then it's able to take a set of 12 to 18 to 24 words and map it back to that actual private key. So now you as a person get shown a screen that you've probably seen before if you're into the crypto space, where it shows you, let's say, 12 or 24 words that you have to write down. And once you write those words down, it kind of tests you again to make sure you have the correct combination of those words. Because those words are actually, those words called the seed phrase, are used to generate the private key. And the private key is kind of the safe part that actually is used to create your address. Private keys are used as like kind of the basis of the address that you see on the Ethereum blockchain or Bitcoin blockchain.
And exactly, that's why people in different companies like Coinbase or MetaMask or whatever other wallets you're using are so adamant on keeping your seed phrase safe and secure and not accessible to anyone but you. Because if anyone gets access to that, they get access to everything. There's no going back. There's no recovering. They stole your funds, all of it.
Yeah. It's like if you have a house, right? Like if you have like keys, actual physical keys to your house, if you lost them on the street and someone finds those keys, they now have access to your home. In the case of a house, you can actually change your locks, but in the case of cryptocurrency, Ethereum, Bitcoin blockchains, you can't actually change the lock because it relates to one specific house or one specific like private key in that case. So that's why you have to be very, very secure with your keys.
Yep. And the best you can do is if someone does find it, you'll probably only know if they take everything from you. But if for some reason you have a suspicion you're compromised, if you're able to get to your wallet and send everything off into a different wallet that you've created, that's the best way you can do it. So now that we see that there's a seed phrase that's generating private key, which is what your public keys are derived of. So how is that linked? So how does the public key that I can share with everyone, how's that okay to share but not the private key?
Yeah, because there's a certain like cryptographic principle where the private key can generate a public key, so something you can show to people, but people can't actually reverse. They can't go from the public key back to the private key. And so if you see in like Ethereum, for example, you see a string of like letters, the hexadecimal letters and numbers. That's about like 42 characters long. It starts with 0x typically, so 0x, and then some 40 strings of like letters and numbers.
Mm-hmm.
That's typically what you can actually show to people, just because they don't actually have access to the funds, but they know where they can send the funds to. Right. So in the case of Ethereum, the way that the public key is generated is based on a certain hashing algorithm. It takes the public key and it hashes it. It basically applies some type of transformation on that private key, and out comes a number, or out comes a hexadecimal number, again, that 40 key public key that people can use to send assets to.
And every time I share that key where people can send their Ethereum to or whatever they
Mm-hmm.
want to that address, and then I would have control over it. And every time I sign a transaction, what is happening in that step where the private key is telling the public key that, or what is actually happening? What is happening to approve a transaction? What wallet is talking to what?
Yeah, so the signing process is really just you proving ownership of that particular address, right? So if I, Sheldon, want to send you, Rudy, again, in the previous last week's episode, I think I said 5 Ethereum, 5 Ether. Um, if I want to send you 5 Ether, I basically have to prove that I, Sheldon, have control over the address that says there's 5 Ether balance in it. And so what happens is that, like, I use my private key and I do this process called signing, where essentially I take the private key and I take the action that I want to take. So for example, in the case of me moving money, that's a transfer. I want to send you 5 Ether. I take those two things, the action and the private key, and I hash those. So basically I, again, apply a transformation, apply a mathematical operation on that data to produce what's called the transaction hash. And that hash basically can say that I, Sheldon, I approve this action to occur. And you can show that with this transaction hash, that this transaction hash can only be generated by the person who controls this particular address. And that's how typically you can actually prove ownership of that action. And then once I send that transaction to a miner, as we learned last week, to add that transaction into a block, that's then how I can actually prove that I own it and then I actually want to take that action.
And it's an important point to remember is that you are showing proof that you own that public key, that
Yeah.
you're allowing this transaction. And the thing is, since it's a blockchain, everything is public, meaning that public key is public not just to you, but to the world. You can go on websites like Etherscan, type in a public key, and see every transaction that key has ever made. The thing is, blockchain is pseudo-anonymous, meaning it's partially anonymous.
Mhm.
So that public key, nobody knows that you probably own it. But as soon as I share that public key to somebody, now that person knows my entire history. So
Mhm.
when doing transactions, it's important to keep that in mind, folks, that use an address that you do not mind exposing to your friends,
Yeah.
family, or the world. Like, choose your parties. That's just a good safety standard. And there are new protocols that's on the way for more privacy focused
Mhm.
transactions, meaning you can create transactions publicly, but no one can actually see how much you own or have. They can just computationally prove that you have done a transaction and you do have the amounts that you're promising.
Mhm.
But that's a whole other episode too. So some more safety tips though. So there's things I keep hearing like cold and hot wallets.
Yeah.
What are the differences between those?
Yeah, so a hot wallet is kind of be thought of as something that's connected to the internet, or it's on a device that's connected to the internet, right? So in the case of MetaMask, if you've downloaded the MetaMask browser extension, so that's something that sits in your browser, whether that's Chrome, Brave, Safari, you have a browser little fox icon that sits in your browser. You can click on that, and that shows an address, a wallet, and that's typically referred to as a hot wallet because it's something that's connected to a device that's connected to the internet and it's very easily accessible. But there's also devices that are also unconnected or disconnected. So like there's Ledger, is a famous company that produces a USB style stick, like a USB size stick. Another company called Trezor produces a kind of a bigger square device that is also disconnected from the internet. But the private keys in both of the Ledger and the Trezor case are physically stuck to the device. So they actually can't be transitioned. We've actually come to learn that that's actually not technically true, but like the details of it is that like the physical device is the one that holds the private keys, not a device that's actually connected to the internet all the time.
Exactly.
That make
And
sense?
that, yeah, and that point is important to remember the private key. lives on the device
Mhm.
and can leave your device with the authorization of yourself saying, I want this key off a device and into a program, which is something called a social recovery program. This is
Mhm.
another thing. So we're talking about don't lose your keys. If you lose it, you're done for forever. There's no chance of getting it back. Well, there are people building out interesting services where they have social recovery, meaning I trust Sheldon, I trust my brother. I'm going to give both of them part access to my wallet. Neither of them can actually do anything with my wallet individually, but if they work together, they can actually move my funds for me in case I ever lose my crypto wallets. It's
Yeah.
something you definitely want to keep with trusted parties. You don't want to do social recovery with people that are you kind of skeptical about. Ledger's case was they had a trusted party to where you can hand in, like, you can show your ID and you get your private key back if you ever need it, if you ever lost it. That's the case we're talking about. Technically, it can be moved off of, but the security element is that when you have your ledger in your hand, it needs to be plugged into your computer physically or through a Bluetooth.
Mhm.
There's many hardware wallets out there, folks, by the way. These aren't the only examples. There's Grid
Yeah.
Plus. There's like, I forgot them all, but there's too many to even name. There's a lot of them out there that you can use for yourself. So you find the one that's most suitable for what your comfort level is. But you have to actually press a button on the physical device to say, I approve and sign this transaction. Whereas in Hot Wallet, it's just button on your laptop. And
Mhm.
give us a rundown on like the safety securities about that with malicious attackers.
Yeah, for sure. So like in the case of MetaMask, one possible attack vector, some way you can actually get hacked, is that if you download malicious code onto your computer, the actual um, malicious code that's on your computer can actually read your MetaMask extension, and that way they'd have the private keys and they can move the assets. Just the fact that they're on your computer. But in the case of like a hardware or a cold wallet, a cold storage wallet, um, it can actually download external software without the actual company who produced that software approving it. So, for example, right in the case of Ledger, no new software can get onto that physical device without Ledger, the company, actually approving it. Or no new, for a case of Trezor, no new company, no other company or entity can get access to the physical device without Trezor approving it, right? So in both those scenarios, the kind of security is based on the fact that no additional software can get onto that device without the company itself approving it. And the company itself doesn't have access to your private keys, but they have the kind of right to block any other third-party software from getting access to the device. It's kind of a way to secure yourself from getting access to it. And then the funny thing is that like you can actually take a hardware wallet, you can actually get the private keys, you can get the seed phrase from the hardware wallet. If you put that seed phrase into a MetaMask, technically you've just made your hardware device a hot wallet, just because now it's in a MetaMask, and so now you have basically two different places where those keys are stored. That's why you have to kind of keep the keys separated and stored in different places.
That's such an important thing to remember too, because your seed phrase is not something that's on it's on the device, but it doesn't necessarily live on the device. It lives on the blockchain.
Mhm.
Therefore, your recovery phrase or private key is generated by a device,
Yeah.
but you can plug that into any wallet, and that's where you can give access to your get access to your wallet again, your public keys. So my ledger can create recovery phrase. I can plug it into MetaMask, and then they both have access to it, like Sheldon said. So it's a blockchain thing, and it all lives on the blockchain. That's why it's super secure. You can actually generate a private key, memorize all the words,
Yeah.
throw out all your devices, and you are completely secure because as long as you have it in your head, you can
Mhm.
access it again through any other wallet.
Yeah. What's actually kind of a funny thing is that you could actually like have the 12 or 24 words generated. You can write those words down, or you can actually get a tattoo of them on your body. And if you make sure
Don't
you
do
like
that though.
delete, terrible idea. If you like delete the actual digital reference of that, you now have a completely cold wallet that is not connected to anything because now it's just really just those 12 words that are on a piece of paper or tattooed to your body.
Exactly.
You just
That's
want
a
to be
good
like
point.
a moving private key.
Exactly. Because like I remember there like you could create paper wallets, which would be the
Yeah.
way to generate a wallet, but completely offline, never connected to the blockchain, but due to the cryptography of it, it's a valid wallet they can use. And then it will sync with the blockchain as soon as you do some type of transaction online. And also, I'm sure people have heard before, not your keys, not your crypto.
Yeah.
This is when we speak about centralized exchanges like
Yeah.
Coinbase, Kraken, Gemini, Binance. They are exchanges that hold your wallets. They hold your private keys. They are the ultimate owner of your funds, just like a bank.
Yeah.
And if they want to pause your transactions, they can. If they get hacked and someone removes your funds, that can happen too. Or if, like FTX situation, it's not crypto's fault. It's actually crypto is very much pro keeping your keys for yourself on your own devices. Centralized exchanges are useful for people who think this is it's maybe a technical challenge to keep your own crypto on your own device, but they'll host it for you. You can use it there. Relatively safe, I would say. Trusted exchanges like Coinbase and Kraken, but and they have their own security measures of trying to keep it as safe as possible. But there is no higher level of safety than at this current moment than to having a hardware wallet that you need to physically have in your possession to confirm transactions. Even if the hacker gets access to your computer and sees your Ledger Live application on your computer and tries to siphon out all your funds, they can't do anything because that device is needed to confirm a transaction.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a lot of new technology coming out to make kind of the user experience easier. Like, for example, in the sugarcane context, we're building ways in which people can actually log in with the email and still have a private key, public key pair that we, the company, actually we don't control or anything like that. And so those allow you to actually still sign transactions without actually having to need to remember a 12-word phrase or have to actually write that down or have to deal with any of the complexity there. But again, right now, it's like, for the most part, hardware wallets are pretty much the gold standard for safety. Paper wallets also a kind of gold standard, but much more clunky. Again, there's more technology coming out to make that whole process easier as well.
Exactly. And
Yep.
as we come out with the Sugarcane app, it's going to be, I feel like, a happy medium between you owning your own keys, but yet having
Yep.
the ease of access everywhere.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
Awesome.
That's all I
And
got.
again, yeah, that was a good one. So
Yeah.
remember, everyone, keep your wallet safe.
Hmm.
Private, public key. Do not share private. Secure that somewhere safe. Never share it.
Yep.
Public key is what you can share, and you want to do your best to make sure you have complete and sole access to that private key.
Hmm.
We'll see you next week, everyone.
All right. See you.